Hello everyone, thank you for having me today. My name is Ashton Henderson, and I'm speaking today on the topic of transnational crime in the country of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is known today in present-day politics and global security issues. I'll be going over transnational crime and the effects it impacts locally, regionally, and globally on human life, financial security, and human safety. Afghanistan is a country with unstable government that has been destroyed over years by war conflicts and multiple insurgency groups that are still currently present there today. First, I'd like to talk about transnational crime. Transnational crime are crimes that have an impact across national and international borders. This means that if a crime is current in Afghanistan and it spreads globally and threatens the United States, that's part of a transnational crime. They can be and are crimes that offended fundamental values of international communities. These crimes can include the following, which are drug trafficking, human trafficking, weapons trafficking, and money laundering. These crimes affect countries' infrastructures and create a large global impact outside their own borders. Human trafficking is a huge issue right now, and drug trafficking, especially in Afghanistan with the opium fields. Transnational crime is a huge issue for surrounding countries that conduct these acts. It also creates developments of more than just one threat inside its borders. So if you have one transnational threat, it can also produce into another transnational threat inside the border and outside the border. Multiple transnational threats can develop others and create an even more dangerous environment locally, regionally, and globally. Afghanistan's transnational crime. The region I would like to focus on is in Eurasia, in the region of Eurasia. This is because the country of Afghanistan and the threats it poses with transnational crimes. Afghanistan is a large producer of opium globally and poses a threat to transnational crime with drug trafficking. Afghanistan accounts for 74% of global output of opium in 2012, quote, Afghanistan 2020. It has also become one of the world's largest transnational drug and crime threat throughout the world. In 2013, opium poppy cultivation reached a record high of 209,000 hectares, which was 36% of the influence in 2012. The Afghan Taliban utilized this financial profit to benefit their insurgency operations and building of ideology. Illicit Afghan opiates are trafficked to almost every continent in the world and has major routes of delivery. Quote, Afghan Opiate 2020. This creates a large influence in drug trafficking while creating a plan to eliminate distribution routes. It also shows the demand of illicit drug production of opium in Afghanistan. Local threat. Afghanistan's threat to local communities is complex and hard to understand. This is a financial means of supporting the farmers' families and a way of income in the region. They influence these farmers to grow this opium for financial support for them instead of a normal plant like the cocoa plant, which is also can be harvested in Afghanistan. Human life is at stake when farmers and families are dependent on illicit drug production of opium crops instead of cocoa cultivation, like I said, and it's a way of means of income in the country. Another threat is the fact that insurgencies, terrorist organizations like the Afghan Taliban use these farmers to produce this crop. It creates a dangerous relationship for those involved and families sucked into by negative influence. Local farmers and families split between United Nations fighting against the supply of opium for drug trafficking and maintaining relations already developed by groups like the Afghan Taliban. It's a means of which side does the Afghan choose. The good side, which is the United Nations trying to build a stable region and a better way of economic support, or fall into the Afghan Taliban ways to produce opium, which is dangerous. The regional threat that it causes. Afghanistan poses large regional threats to surrounding countries in Eurasia. This is because of the production and distribution of drug trafficking outside Afghan's borders with opium production. 75% of Afghans' opiates are trafficked through Iran and Pakistan, and these countries have been the two main transits for Afghanistan drug trafficking, quote, Afghan 2013. This includes 160 megatons to 365 megatons of heroin that is produced from this product. 25% of Afghans' opiates are trafficked through the northern route in Central Asia, quote Afghan 2013. This includes 90 megatons of heroin, and key countries involved are China and Russia. This creates more elements to impact other nations from the response of the United Nations. This also threatens the human life of those involved outside Afghanistan's borders, like Iran and Pakistan. Afghan Taliban can utilize their intimidation techniques and terror to maintain relations and develop routes for continuous drug trafficking. They can also influence by means of financial support of countries and contribute to drug trafficking efforts. Insurgencies utilized the means of the Afghan government to focus on them instead of drug trafficking characteristics. Drug trafficking regulation in Afghanistan is second to the security forces that are fighting against the insurgencies, which is their first priority. So the actual security forces focus on the insurgency groups instead of the actual production of drug trafficking. Global threat. Afghanistan's global threat, because of drug trafficking, can branch in many ways. These include the threat of growing insurgencies, to money laundering and drug epidemics in other countries. Insurgencies in Afghanistan and the Afghan Taliban have limited to financial means of wealth. United Nations, United States, and the European Union have implemented sanctions on Afghanistan to prevent financial means to support those insurgencies. So what this means is these nations have put sanctions on this country of Afghanistan to limit their financial means and look towards producing drugs like opium for financial means of support. Opium production in Afghanistan is a means of financial support for the Afghan Taliban and their insurgencies. It creates a means of development in the region for rogue groups and insurgencies. They utilize these profits made by opium to purchase soldiers to fill their ranks and to pay farmers to continue the production of opium. They also use the means of this to purchase items like weapons, equipment, and materials that they use to cause actions globally, locally, and regionally. With the growth of insurgency group, with the groups and resources to develop the group in causes strain globally, knowing there is a threat that can reach outside the Afghan borders. Drug epidemics are threatening countries globally. The United States is one of the countries realizing the dangers of drug trafficking and opium production in Afghanistan. In 2016, we lost 64,000 Americans to drug overdoses. That's 174 deaths per day, 7 per hour. We must get more tougher on drug dealers and pushers if we're going to succeed in stopping this scourge. Trump's State of the Union Address 2018. Taliban opium eradication program was implemented to destroy the opium fields and production of heroin. This was the use of military arms, equipment, and bombs to destroy opium fields. The United States realized they were spending more money on this operation than they were of eliminating the profits of opium production. Overdose of heroin is killing Americans and people in the countries every year. In 2001, the use of heroin in the U.S. increased more than 20 times its normal rate. Quote, Heroin 2019. In closing, Afghanistan is a threat globally, locally, and regionally when it comes to drug trafficking. They are one of the largest producers of opium in the world and contribute to multiple transactional crimes caused by drug trafficking in Afghanistan. They influence rogue behavior, insurgency growth, and terrorist activity throughout the region in Eurasia. It is a continuous fight for stabilization and elimination of transnational threats in Afghanistan. We as nations need to build the country up with our opportunities besides drug agriculture as a way of financial independence. We as nations need to provide security for those influenced by insurgencies to be involved with drug trafficking in Afghanistan, and we as nations need to provide support those already addicted to heroin inside or outside the Afghan borders. Thank you for your time, and hopefully you guys can relate to me on the problems with Afghanistan and transnational crime with drug trafficking.